Well, watch the news for about 5 minutes and you'll quickly realize just how depraved our country has become. And yet, in the midst of the chaos, there are those trying to be a positive example, some of those people being professional athletes. Our Lindsay Keith recently caught up with a former pro who's being a light in a dark world.
Thanks, guys. Well, Cedrick Brown is a man who isn't afraid to go against the grain to do what's right. As a former NFL player with the Philadelphia Eagles, a successful businessman, and now the pastor of Commitment Community Church in New Jersey, he is making a difference in many realms across the country. And he joins us by way of Skype right now. Pastor Brown, thanks so much for joining us.
Hello, Lindsay. Thank you for having me.
Well, Pastor Brown, you know, you have been a voice for many with some of the social issues that we're seeing going on around our country. And as a former NFL player, what do you feel like a pro athlete's role is in society?
That's an excellent question. And I think a lot of times as professional athletes, we dumb down the role to some degree. But I believe our role is essential. I believe God has given us a platform to be able to touch lives. I believe football and other sports, professional sports in particular, is a form of entertainment, which kind of opens the heart, connects the heart of people. And I believe that's a privilege that God gives each one of us, is to have access to a person's heart and be able to then influence that heart, if you would, in a positive direction.
You know, I know that a lot of athletes grow up in some roughened environments. You did as well yourself. How do you feel like that shapes their worldview and how they respond to some of these issues that we're seeing in the media?
Well, I tell you, you can go one way or the other, I believe, in any environment that you're raised in. You could be raised in a perfect environment, if you would, if there's such a thing. But if you grow up in a tough neighborhood like I did in Compton, California, you have an alternative to either go with the grain or go against the grain, as was mentioned earlier. And I think if you choose to go against the grain, meaning dare not to be like or be a product of your environment, you can rise above it and really actually come back to help your community, help the environment to which you've grown up in very creative ways.
That's awesome. You know, I know that, you know, we've seen so much in the news, things with Baltimore, with Ferguson. Do you feel like there's a solution to some of these problems, of these social injustices that we've seen?
In summary, one word: Christ. At the end of the day, it is Christ and Him alone that will ultimately settle everyone's heart. Because what you're seeing is just a deep-rooted issue of the heart, which has been in play since the beginning of time. You look at Cain and Abel, and it just continues to migrate, throughout our time, is that what really is going to help me love my neighbor like I love myself is the love of Christ. And it is not until really we as a society humbles ourselves before the mighty hand of God and realize that Christ is the only answer. I don't think it'll ever go away on the side of heaven. We can go out and feed people, but at the end of the day, if you feed them to feel good about yourself, you only are going to do something that's temporary. But if you feed a person because it permeates from the heart of Christ, I will sustain that, and I will also teach you how to feed yourself.
Well, it's awesome what you've been able to do now with your new role. Thank you for being a voice for good in our society, and thank you for being willing to go against the grain, Pastor Brown.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the opportunity to communicate what God has done in my life.
You know, Ray, you hear that interview that Lindsay did with Cedrick Brown there, and it does bring up a topic we've talked about so many times about just the platform that professional athletes have. And he said, a lot of times athletes dumb down their role. I'm just a football player, I'm just a baseball player, but they have such a unique platform, and it makes me appreciate people like a Liberty alum I spoke to recently, Rashad Jennings, a guy that takes a look at the bigger picture, who says, I'm not just a football player, I want to be a well-rounded individual. I'm going to learn as much as I can, because you have such a unique opportunity to speak into the lives of people because of your profession, and many don't take advantage of that.
And he didn't talk about this in the interview, but Lindsay mentioned it to us, just how a high school football coach kind of has the same platform. His coach made a tremendous impact in his life when he was living in Compton. So, lower levels, you can still make a huge impact.
No doubt. Sports is such a great avenue to reach young people, as we've talked about so many times.